Thanks for joining me. So, in episode one, I talked about what it has to be me is and shared some of my it has to be me moments in the hopes that it would help you find and identify some of your really pivotal it has to be me moments that have shaped your life. One of the big things about it has to be me is and recognizing those moments is being present in your own story and really RSVPing, picking up those invitations to look at yourself and to explore yourself and stay curious and interested in what makes you tick. And so part of that is really looking at the kinds of stories that you're telling yourself and the kinds of stories that you're choosing. It has to be me that you want to put yourself in and be a part of and participate in. And the stories that we tell ourselves, they matter. So, are you telling yourself the I can, I will story? I can do anything I want to do and I will do it and I will figure out how to do it. It has to be me to do it. Or is your life more a collection of stories of I can't, it won't work out, no one's going to pick me? And I think that we tend to inhabit both, at different parts in our life, but we tend to be dominant in one. And I think that those stories get ingrained in us from childhood, right? So we get taught the stories that are acceptable in our family. All families have rules of engagement. Every family does, right? And we learn how to play by those rules and then we carry them forward in the rest of our life, right? So I want to ask you, do you see obstacles or opportunities? How do you respond to change? So do you see yourself, your story as a love story? Or is it a tragedy or a horror story or a series of disappointments? And again, I think that we all tend to do, a little bit of everything, but really I'm encouraging you to look at yourself and your life as a love story, that it's all about love and self-love. And by practicing self-love, we then can share love with others. And so I like to think of my life in movie analogies. So I don't know if you like the movie The Holiday, with Kate Winslet and Jack Black and Cameron Diaz and Jude Law. Such a great Christmas movie, right? But when Arthur is sitting with Iris in the restaurant and he said, "You need to be the leading lady in your own story." And she said, "Arthur, that was brutal but brilliant, I mean, yes. Are you choosing to be the leading person in your own story? Or are you choosing to get lost in other people's stories? I have certainly done that, right? Where I shared in episode one about some of my stories where I became addicted to helping others. What I realized through some of those stories was that it was a convenient place to hide. Even though I love helping others, I do it with a whole heart. Helping others is a beautiful quality. So if you genuinely enjoy helping others, that's a wonderful thing. As long as it's in balance, right? So our superhero is our Achilles heel when not held in balance. So what I've discovered in my life is that I need to be holding it in balance. I really, really love and genuinely derive pleasure from helping other people achieve their dreams. However, it cannot be to the detriment of my own dreams and my own health. So I invite you to look at how you're holding that balance between self-care and care for others. So where are you hiding? I ask myself that question quite a bit, constantly keeping the focus on other people is a form of disconnection. It keeps us disconnected from ourselves to a degree. In some instances, it can also be a beautiful place of connection as well. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm inviting you to choose to be inside your own story, even if it's uncomfortable at times. What's here for me today? Staying present in what it is, right? So I think that's where we realize what we really want and what we really want to be doing. And I think if we just be still and quiet and give ourselves permission to listen, we know what to do. You know what to do, just like I know what to do. The confusion comes when I don't give myself permission. Can you relate to that? So I talked in episode 1 about how my family are really curious and thirsty and constantly want to ask questions. You know, when Cara and Lee got married, when my sister and my brother-in-law got married years ago now, at their wedding, Lou Mitchell, a friend of ours who married them, told a story that when Lee went to his mother and said, you know, how do I talk to girls, you know, to a girlfriend? His mother said, just keep asking questions. What great advice. Isn't that like the greatest advice? So I invite you to keep asking yourself questions. Get curious. Be really interested without judgment, just on your own thoughts, your emotions, your experience. Stay inside of it, right? And in episode 1, I asked you what your superpower or your superpowers, what they are. And being able to identify what you do really well and owning it and claiming it is a really big part of it. Has to be me. And taking action on it has to be me. But that you do have what it takes. And if you don't, you'll figure it out and you'll resource yourself and get help to figure it out, right? So I think that, you know, so often we are so many things that we don't even realize that we are or that we're giving ourselves permission to be, right? So I'll give you an example in my life. So when I started the Blender Girl, I owned one blender when I started that, you know, and then it became I owned hundreds of blenders, and I decided I was going to practice and practice and practice, and I was going to become an expert in this. If I was going to do this, I wanted to be really good at it. So by practicing every day, every week, developing recipes, doing all this stuff, I became a very knowledgeable about blenders, you know. And so then companies started asking me what I thought about their products, you know, and I started to tell them. And over the course of this time, the engineers and the designers and the people at this company started saying, you know what? Her advice is actually really bang on. Like, do you mind if I talk to her about this? And so therein became this process of me really starting to work in the blender space in a different way. And honestly, the imposter syndrome came in the beginning. I'm not going to lie to you, like just going, who am I to tell a designer, an industrial designer or engineer how to change their blender, this multi-gajillion dollar company? I mean, it was just kind of crazy if you thought about it, right? Well, they were just asking for my opinion, and my opinion was XYZ. Well, what ended up happening was that, you know, I started working with some companies, and then KitchenAid landed on my doorstep, literally landed on my doorstep with a polystyrofoam box and a blender inside of it, this prototype, you know. And it started this 5-year relationship where I became the global ambassador for blenders, and I worked with the designers and engineers at KitchenAid to develop what I considered to be some pretty incredible blenders. If you have the K400 blender at KitchenAid, the high performance blender, the K150, I mean, they're really incredible blenders. What an amazing opportunity that was to work with one of the most incredible appliance manufacturers in the world and really start to flex that muscle of figuring out solutions in this different way. But gosh, if you had have asked me 30 years ago, could you do that? I would have literally laughed. I mean, it just didn't even seem possible. But it was clearly inside of me to do it. I clearly had the ability, and I worked really hard at becoming that person, you know? So if you have, we are what we practice, is my point in this story, where how do you get good at something? By practicing, by learning about it, by studying, by doing it, by communing with people that do it really well and so forth, right? That's how you get really good at something. So, you know, I gave that analogy in episode 1 about sometimes the best teacher for a 3rd grader is a 4th grader that I got from my friends Bo and Elizabeth. Yes, right? So, you know, how do you choose to show up? You know, I really want to ask you that. And this is a question I ask myself every single day. What does it has to be me look like today? Right? So are the choices that you're making serving your lifestyle or detracting from what you want your life to look like, right? So how are you going to show up today? So I talked in episode 1 about how I make sense of the world, right? It's through food, nutrition, stories, right? So I'm going to tell you again, I feel like for me, that's how I make sense of it, right? If I'm taking care of myself and practicing self-care in this area with what I choose to eat, how I choose to exercise, who I choose to hang out with, the thoughts that I choose to entertain and give weight to and embrace, then I can practice and be disciplined over in these other areas, right? So I want to ask you, what are the non-negotiables in your self-care? What has to happen every day, every week, every month, or periodically, regularly for you to feel good, for you to be the best version of yourself? So for me, it's I need to drink water every day. I need to eat a lot of vegetables. I need to go to sleep and have really good quality sleep. I need to move my body and exercise every day. I need to be doing some spiritual practices like meditation and breathing. I need to, see my counselor once a month, just to make sure I'm staying on track. There's just certain things. So what are your non-negotiable things that help you be the best version of yourself? And are you doing those things? Are you practicing who you want to be? Right? So I always want to be practicing who I want to be, right? So how do you make decisions? With your gut, right? You're going to know in your gut. So, going back to my rom-com analogy with the holiday, right? What does your gut tell you? It's not just for chick flicks and rom-coms. It's a real physical thing in the body, right? So we know that science tells us that there is a gut-brain connection or the gut-brain axis. Our gut is our second brain. You've probably heard this about the gut microbiome, right? So there is an enteric nervous system, right? So our gut and our brain is connected by the vagus nerve is the largest nerve, but there's a whole bunch of others, right? And our gut sends messages to our brain sends messages to our gut, and it literally controls our entire body, right? And it controls how we think and feel. It's connected to our blood sugar, our hormones, how hungry we feel, how satiated we feel, our mood stability, how well we sleep, how much energy we have. I mean, it just affects everything, right? So we know that science tells us this. So for me, that's why all of my work centers around gut health and improving people's gut health and digestion, because it's the center of our decision-making process, right? So when you eat processed foods and junk foods and lots of sugar and tons of alcohol and all the time, it dulls your experience, your senses, your pathways. You're not going to make you're already not making good decisions with food on a regular basis, but then it's going to have a flow-on effect to the other decisions you make. You're going to be tired. You're going to have foggy brain. You're not going to be able to think clearly. You're not going to have energy. You're just not going to be present, right? So does it mean you never eat that stuff? Of course you do. We want to be finding that balance of self-care and fun. But again, it's what we practice every day, right? So, my point in telling you that story is to eat well, but to trust your gut. You know what to do, right? And to look after it, right? So listening and trusting our intuition. I closed with that in episode 1, right? And I want to bring it up here again, right? That I want to ask you how your intuition shows up. And are you trusting it? And are you choosing to be in relationship with people that are holding up mirrors? I talked about that in episode 1, right? I want to ask you that again, right? So, often we just feel we're not trusting ourselves, that we know what it has to be me looks like, right? Because we're listening to other people in our lives, or we're feeling down about ourselves. We're feeling like we're not enough, right? That I'm not enough, I'm too much kind of spiral that we all get into, right? I was really honest in episode 1 about, my imposter syndrome. Oh gosh, I mean, if you're listening to this thinking that nobody else feels that way, I promise you, I can tell you that I do all the time, right? I just engage with it or choose to engage with it in a way that helps me see that that's not true, that I have something to say and people want to hear what I have to say. And when I can't get there on my own, I resource myself. And that's why I might go to my counselor, talk to a friend, speak to my mum or dad, speak to my sister, a trusted person, right? So, we all need help, right? But I mean, I certainly felt that way when I got my book deal, when I started working with KitchenAid, when I created the Decadent Detox program with my business partner, Karen, when I created the Skinny 60 health programs. I mean, when I get a job as an actor, when I get a job as a voiceover artist and I've got to voice a commercial. I mean, I go through this where I go, ooh, gosh, someone else probably can do this better. I'll just leave that to somebody else. Do you ever feel that way where you just go, somebody else will do it better? Well, if you decide that they will, they will. But if you decide it has to be me and only I can show up with this uniqueness that is me. And so the story's never going to be the same if somebody else tells it. I have to tell it. So we do pick and choose our it has to be me moments, right? And I really encourage you to give yourself permission to do it your way. So here's an example in my life. So nobody taught me how to be a life coach and a wellness coach. Well, as that's coming out of my mouth, I say that nobody taught me. What I mean by that is I didn't go to school, to study to be, in a formal educational setting. But the reason why I stopped myself as it came out of my mouth was that I've been training my whole life to do this. Right? All of my experiences have been training me to show up and have conversations with these people. And so while I haven't trained in an official capacity to be a coach, I'm really, really good at it because I decided I was going to show up as my best self and start practicing. And over the years and years that I've been doing this now, am I getting better and better at it every single day that I do it and every single week that I do it? Yeah. So I just needed to give myself permission. And also, I choose to stay in my lane, right? So I talked about this in episode 1 as well, where when I created, Skinny 60 and the 60-day reset and the 14-day cleanse with the Decadent Detox, yes, I'm very knowledgeable about health and nutrition. I'm extremely passionate about it. I could have been a dietitian or a nutritionist or gone off and done that, but I wanted to be an actor and be in stories and I wanted to do it all, right? But to make sure that I've got the credibility and that I am making sure that every single person in our programs is in the care of experts in every area, I make sure that I've got dietitians and doctors on my board, but we facilitate the 60-day reset with a team of dietitians, so people with medical licenses. So my point in telling you that is I just gave myself permission to do it my way. Right. And then I brought on people that were going to fill in the parts that I didn't have the credentials to do. Right. So that we could provide this really holistic, very effective service for people. Right. So that dream that's in your heart right now, I know it's there and probably several. I'm going to ask you again what your superpower is. Right? What do you do really well that you could share with the world that also just gives you joy, that lights you up, that fans that fire in you, that makes you happy, that gives you a reason to get out of bed, that makes you feel good about yourself, that you can actually share with others to help them be better, to help them feel great about themselves, to help them fix something. We've all got it. You've got it in your heart. You have the ability. You just got to decide it has to be me. So, again, we are what we practice, right? And so, again, the reason why I keep coming back to these food analogies, it's because that's what I know, but it's because we all know that, right? Because we're all doing it every day. So if I was to sit here and give an electrician analogy, we're not all electricians, but we all are eaters and we're all human beings, right? So I think they're powerful analogies. So, with food, every single time you eat or drink, you're either feeding disease or you're fighting it. It's a choice, right? Now, it doesn't mean we don't eat pizza and have the cake and have the glass of wine or whatever. Yeah, we want to be doing everything in balance. But again, it's like anything. If we're doing it out of balance, then it becomes something that doesn't necessarily serve our better health, right? But if we do it sometimes, it can be very joyful and wonderful. And we're doing it in communion, making happy memories with family and friends, right? So it's just about that balance. So I want to ask you, are you being strategic in your life? Now, it's really interesting, the word strategic, isn't it? Because well, for some people, it conjures up um, being calculating or being manipulative or being underhanded or something. That it can for some people. When I ask you, are you being strategic? What I mean, I think strategic's being really smart, right? It's planning ahead, deciding and redeciding that you're going to get what you want. And, when you get strategic, it's about making a plan that works for you. It's a plan of attack that's appropriate for you about how you're going to get what you want. So I'll give you a food example again. So here is an example of not being strategic. Is just looking at a bunch of food charts and going, these are all the healthy foods, right? And I'm eating broccoli, I'm eating spinach, I'm eating clean grilled protein, I'm eating omega fatty acids, I'm taking my fish oil capsule, I'm going for a walk, I'm doing all the things, the good things, but it's still not moving the needle. I'm still not reaching my health goals. If I had $1 for every time I heard that from someone in our community, I would own my own island and we'd all be having a party there together right now. It's so common, right? And I've even gone through that in my life before I understood the difference between clean eating and strategic eating, right? So I talked in episode 1 about how I hate diets. They don't work. They're miserable. They feed that deprivation mentality. They're not sustainable and they can be downright dangerous. So just because a diet worked for one person, it's not necessarily going to work for you. It's also just no fun, right? And we know from science that they just don't work like long term. And you don't want to get into that yo-yo where you take the weight off and you put it back on because you can't stick with it, right? Because it's restrictive and limiting. So instead, it's about figuring out how the pieces of the healthy living pie come together for you with your health goals, your genes, your stress levels, your activity levels, your health status, the medications you're taking, the health goals, your age, your personality, your family life, etc. They all play in to how the strategy is going to look for you about what you're eating. And this is why I have a team of dietitians, because we need help to do this and we need help from experts, and dietitians are the medical experts in how to use food as a functional tool for better health, right? So why wouldn't we use them, right? Why wouldn't we want to ask them questions and go to an expert, right? Who's going to look at our situation and our blood work and go, okay, here's what you might want to try. Right? And it's a bit of trial and error, right? Figuring out the strategy, figuring out the path, figuring out what's appropriate for you, figuring out the pieces of the puzzle. Where do I get my information? Who do I team up with? Who do I go for support? Who do I ask questions? Who do I listen to with advice? And then what do I try? And then do I listen to that data? So the food example is a really great template for how you can use and create a strategy to apply to any decisions you're making in your life, right? And how we practice. And the other thing I want to ask you is, are you personalizing your experience, or are you making decisions with a cookie cutter or a template of someone else's experience, and then feeling confused about why it's not quite working for you? I think that we do this, right? Myself included. So we'll see somebody else having an experience. So again, I'll use the weight loss health thing as an example again. So you might see someone who's lost all this weight and this particular thing worked really well for them. And then you buy into it and you go and do it, and well, it's not working for me. And then, well, I'm a failure. There must be something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just using a strategy that's not appropriate for you, right? It's just the wrong strategy. So, For me, this is why the exciting place with nutrition is personalized nutrition, right? Is personalizing the experience for each and every person, right? So that's the exciting part for me, is that we get to figure it out. My team, we get to know each participant. We help you figure out exactly what's going on and what the strategy will be. And then we just help you tweak it, right? So you get it right. It's like a little puzzle. I love it, right? So, again, this is the strategy piece, and it takes time, right? You're not going to figure out every bit of it has to be me today in this moment. You're going to figure out pieces of it, and you're going to just chip away at it, right? It has to be me to eat a salad. It has to be me to go for a walk right now, right? It has to be me to go to bed early tonight. I know that I haven't been feeling well rested. There's all these little micro decisions that we're making that make room for these big decisions. Like, because when you feel healthy and strong, you feel like you can take on anything. You feel really courageous. You feel like you can do it. It's just how you feel, right? So while you're making all these micro decisions, then you're ready for when it's like, should I take that job? Yeah. Why not me? Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm going to make that change. I'm doing it, and I'll figure it out because I'm really strong, right? So, I think that the thing about paying attention and listening to yourself, I would invite you to do that without judgment. So often when we're paying attention and we're looking at ourselves, we often really judge, and we can get into that kind of shame and blame thing, that spiral of I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, or why did I do that? I'm an idiot. Why did I do that? Well, you did it because you did it. So what are we going to learn from it, right? What are you going to learn from it? And I can get into that place too, but I've just developed some tools to consciously redirect myself in the moment. Well, you did it, so you can't undo it. So mistakes, I don't actually believe in mistakes. It's just stuff we did, right? Are we going to learn from it? Then it was constructive. It was good that it happened, right? So the without judgment piece is really key. So I'll use a food analogy again. The term mindful eating has become synonymous with I only eat healthy. I only eat healthy food, right? Well, who does that? Myself included. I'm eating the wedding cake at a wedding. I'm having, some potato chips sometimes because I feel like it. I'm doing it. I don't do it every day, but if I'm sitting there with a friend and I'm going to make a happy memory, going to laugh over a bag of potato chips, I'm doing it sometimes, right? So in our community, we like the definition of mindful eating is paying attention to the eating experience without judgment. And the without judgment piece is so key because we're just looking, listening, learning. That's it. So I would just invite you to apply that mindful strategic approach with everything in your life, right? Where you can just start to really celebrate the lessons along the way, right? Without judgment. And again, going back to the Nelson Mandela quote from episode 1, I never lose. I either win or I learn. So if you're winning and learning, how can you judge that, right? If you have a commitment to wanting to be better, how can you judge what's coming up, right? It's coming up. So look at it, learn from it, right? And be better. When you are thinking about your it has to be me moments, I think it's really helpful to think about how you want to feel. Like basing your choices on how you want to feel. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel strong. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel like I matter. I want to feel like I'm making a contribution. I want to feel excited to get out of bed, whatever it is, right? So that's how I base all my it has to be me moments, or the it has to be me moments that I take action on, right? Is that. So how do you want to feel, right? I talked in episode 1 about my Epstein-Barr virus story, helping me understand that I have the power to control how I feel. And, then the Rob story that I told later on in my life taught me that I had the power to control how I feel in my mind about myself and about others, right? That it's a choice. Perspective is a choice, right? So how are you treating yourself? How are you making decisions? How are you using your power? So I'll use the food analogy again. Are you using food to celebrate your life as a source of light and love and power? Or are you treating your body with medication because you're not treating your body with food? Right? So, you know, we have two choices in life, right? We can go down two paths, one of two paths. The first path is eat poor food and potentially be on medication, supplements, and drugs and die sooner than I need to die. Or door two, the second path, which is eat really great food most of the time, and I'll be on less medications or no medications, and I'll live a long, happy life and be ready and strong and healthy to do anything that I might want to do and be ready for whatever life throws at me and never miss out on an opportunity, right? So it's interesting, right? If we think about this, why is there so much dis-ease, disease, right? So why is diabetes an epidemic? Fatty liver disease is an epidemic with over 30% of people having that. Over 70% of women are constipated, right? I mean, so many people have heart disease, cancer. I mean, it's just there's so much dis-ease because we're walking through door A, right? We're hiding, we're disconnecting from our full power, right? And we're not choosing it has to be me to step into my full power. So I ask you, are you stepping into your full power? Do you have control over your life? Do you feel like you have control? Are you deciding it has to be me to take control, to be in my power? So I hear this phrase a lot. When I ask people, okay, so I'll give you an example in my program. When we have a member questionnaire that we send out to every member when they join the program. We get to know them, right? What are your health goals? Who do you live with? Do you have any, what medications do you want? All that sort of stuff. We really get to know people. What are your superpowers? Is a question, right? What's your support network look like? All that stuff. And so often the why are you doing this? Why do you want to be better? Is this. I want to feel like I'm in control of my life again. Well, yeah. Don't we all want to feel that way? I want to feel that way. And I want to feel like that every day, right? That I am in the driver's seat of my own life. I am the director of my movie, my life, right? I'm the leading lady in my own story, going back to that analogy. So Leslie, this lovely woman in our community, she came in saying that. And so she was going through menopause and oh man, she was just feeling completely out of control. Her and her husband are both really athletic, and they had just, as she said in her words, I'd coasted by being athletic and just kind of sort of mindlessly shoving food into my mouth and eating whatever and not paying attention or putting much thought into it. And I was able to feel pretty good my whole life because I exercised, and we just thought, you know what, if we can just burn it off, we're going to be good. That was our attitude. And then as her and her husband started to get older, it didn't work that way. Aging, the degradation is real. You've got to be paying attention even more than you did when you were younger, right? Because there's just literal physical degradation and your hormones change and it's just different. So you've got to be even more mindful, even more caring, even you've got to practice, right? The better things in order to be showing up in later life as your full self. So she had developed ADHD and put on weight and was not sleeping through the night, didn't have energy, all kinds of health issues, and her husband as well. And so when they started eating strategically and figuring out how to eat, when she started figuring out how to eat for her body and her needs at this moment in time in her 50s, that's when the magic happened. And what I love about what she shared, you can actually watch her video. Actually, there's a video of her. She recorded a really beautiful video at skinny60.com. You can look at that if you want to. But she shared the flow-on effect of empowering herself with better food choices, the flow-on effect that had in her life, where just like what I was talking about, when you practice eating and drinking better, you start practicing being better in every other part of your life, and you start to feel empowered in every other part of your life. And so she just said, I feel like I've got my life back. I feel like I've got control of my life. And she was starting a new business. Her husband was starting a new business. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of unknowns, a lot of, wow, this is new, and they just felt like they had what it took to make it happen. And whew, are they flying? It's thrilling to watch. So every choice that you make is connected to every other choice. So all of these little micro, it has to be me moments along the way make room for the really big, it has to be me. So are you choosing to take control of your life? Are you choosing to lean into the things that are going to help you show up and be the best version of yourself? I think part of getting ready for it has to be me is arming yourself with knowledge, right? Knowledge about yourself, knowledge from the outside world, studying, practicing, really resourcing yourself, right? So knowledge is power, right? So do you understand what you're doing? Do you have the whole story? Are you looking at the whole picture? Are you ready to take action on your it has to be me, right? So again, I'll use a food example because that's what I know. That's how I make sense of the world, right? So, for example, we were talking about the food choices making room for the big choices. So, we know that sugar creates acid, acid creates inflammation, and chronic or excessive inflammation is the root of all dis-ease, all those little niggly symptoms like, high blood pressure and cholesterol, not sleeping well, hormone disruptions, mood instability, skin issues, all those little niggly things that sometimes we ignore, constipation, diarrhea, whatever. If we ignore them and we don't attend to them, it's our body's way of crying out, going, please, please, please make some changes. You're killing us. That's what those symptoms are, right? If we ignore it, it eventually leads to chronic disease, which is the cancer, the diabetes, the heart disease, death, right? So it's that thing of when we're choosing to eat better, to regulate our blood sugar, to regulate our blood pressure and cholesterol, to sleep well, to manage our stress, we're just going to be the better version of ourselves, right? So it's arming yourself with the knowledge about that nutrition information, right? Knowing what is credible information, right? Because like I said, there's so much misinformation about nutrition out there and all these crazy diets, right? That are making people even sicker than they were the reason they started doing them, right? So where are you getting your information about that thing that you want to be better at? Your it has to be me, right? So another example might be you love you want to open a bakery. Well, you got to research, don't you? You got to research the other bakeries in the area. You got to study and be doing it. Now, home baking's different than baking at scale in a commercial kitchen. And you got to start getting the information, right? You got to bring in the right people, right? So, for me in my life, I'm always wanting to stay rooted in science. We're just really interpreting data in our program, right? It's just mainstream science that's out there. And then we provide a way to interpret that and a way to understand that and a way to apply that to your specific situation, right? So, if we think about, it's interesting, going back to where do we get our information from and what do we believe in? With food, a lot of the stuff about food comes from ads, right? It comes from the top of a package. It comes from the processed food industry. It comes from lobby groups, right? Might not necessarily be what's actually science based, right? So I see this all the time, right? Where people have to rethink and relearn their ideas about food, right? That starving yourself isn't and dieting isn't the way to actually get healthy, right? You can actually eat lots of beautiful food. It's just about what's appropriate for you and in what quantities, right? I mean, that's really what interests me, right? I think it's about what we add, not what we take away, right? So are you going to choose you? Are you going to choose to show up and arm yourself with the information that you need to go after your it has to be me, right? To believe that you deserve it, but also to be ready for whatever comes, right? And so one of the big reasons why I do the work that I do is to help people be ready, right? It's again, when you're in a strong, healthy body, you feel like you can do anything, right? Like, so I never want my physical health to be the reason why I say no to anything. Anything. I don't want that to be the reason. I want my no to come from, I don't want to do that. Not, I can't do that because I don't have the energy, because I've got a heart condition, because, you know, if you said to me tomorrow, like I've gone to Nepal and trekked, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. If somebody invited me to do that again, I would do that again in a heartbeat. In fact, I dream of doing it again. And I've just decided I'm going to do it again. It has to be me to do that, right? It was so incredible. Well, I'm a lot older than when I did it, when I was 17 years old, right? But I don't want my health to be the reason why I can't do it the next time, right? That's one example, but maybe, some other examples. This why comes up a lot in my program, in the member questionnaire. It's I want to have an active retirement with my husband and be active and be able to play with my grandchildren. That is a big why that comes up a lot. It's a beautiful why, right? Well, yeah, you don't want, and some women actually in their 50s will say, I can't play with my children. I don't have any energy, so I'm missing out, and the whole family's off, going on these bike rides, and I can't do it. And I'm sick of sitting by my window reading a book and watching them all ride off. I don't want to be that person anymore. Then it's wonderful that you're here and you're choosing it has to be me to make the changes that are necessary so that I'm getting on that bike soon with the rest of my family. And so, again, don't let your physical health be the reason why you say no to anything. The other really important thing is, how do you feel in yourself, your mental health, right? This is a really big one. I want to go back to what I was talking about with this gut-brain connection, right? That our gut controls our emotions, right? Our gut controls our mood stability, right? And so the foods that you eat have a direct impact on how you feel mentally and emotionally. So Sharon, this is a really powerful example of this. So Sharon is this lovely woman in the program, who she was really in a dark place when she came into the program, where she was feeling really, really hopeless and really lost. And these are her words. And she just had all kinds of health issues, and she had really crippling anxiety and really huge stress levels. She's got a very stressful job. She's incredibly smart, really capable and talented, and works, in entertainment, works in making beautiful stories happen. And she absolutely loves what she does. But she just wasn't having fun in her life and wasn't believing in her capacity to hold her life, and just wasn't happy. And so she had been seeing, some doctors and some specialists, and she tried lots of different things and was making some really, really, really good choices. Because I don't think any of us make all bad choices or all good choices, if we want to put those judgmental labels on it, right? We just make a bunch of choices, right? And some of them serve our better self and some of them don't, right? And so this is how we learn, right? And so when she came into the program, which actually she entered our world, through the Decadent Detox. And so she started with the 14-day cleanse. And on the first call, she just burst into tears. She was just really, really needed support and to be loved on, and everybody just held the space so beautifully, because she wasn't the only person. Like, we all want to vent and want to express ourselves. And it was incredible to watch what happened in just 14 days of eating beautiful foods, giving herself permission to focus on self-care, giving herself this gift of this time of this retreat of paying attention to what was going on, expressing and using her voice, speaking her truth, giving herself permission to get it wrong in inverted commas, to commune with a bunch of strangers on the internet, right? That takes courage. That amazes me all the time about our community, that it's all online, right? It's a bunch of different people all over the world coming together and realizing we actually know each other. We do. If you keep asking questions and you listen, you share your story and you let other people in, you realize that we actually all know each other because our core need is the same, right? You just got to decide it has to be me to show up and share, right? And listen. And so it was incredible what happened where her cleaning up her digestion, her gut health, and then she came into the 60-day reset and then it went, supercharged. It went on a whole other level, right? So we were able to get really granular and really super strategic. But like I was talking about with Leslie's story, the empowerment that came from cleaning those pathways and starting to practice self-care, Sharon took up that invitation to really practice this self-care and be mindful and pay attention, and extraordinary things happened. She was able to regulate her blood sugar, regulate her blood pressure and cholesterol, manage her stress, get her moods more stable, lose weight when she thought it was impossible during menopause, and all that sort of stuff, right? So things that she thought were impossible became possible. And so for me, I keep constellating around this idea around superpowers. I believe that we are all superheroes. I am a superhero because I believe that I am in my own life, and you are a superhero in your life. Where we have this extraordinary ability to believe, to make magic happen, to decide it has to be me, to go after things, to figure it out, to experience incredible pain, incredible glory, these extreme emotions, and learn from it and adapt and change and grow and expand. And I think that's pretty magical. More impressive to me than any Marvel movie, right, that exists in a fantasy. That if you choose to believe that you have incredible, unlimited power in your own life, extraordinary things happen. So you just got to choose to show up. You just got to choose to show up. And I would add, choose to show up and decide that you matter, and that you're going to give it a go, and you're going to clean up the mess later, and you're going to learn from the mess and wait around in the mess and rub it all over you. I mean, when I first launched the Blender Girl, I was sitting in a bar with my friend Kane, and I was explaining to him what I was going to do. And he goes, I love this for you. Oh, this is so what you're meant to be doing. You love that thing. You're always doing it. I said, I really feel like it has to be me. I really feel like this is what I'm meant to be doing. And he goes, and he has this incredible photography business. And he goes, come and take some pictures. And I went, oh, no. He goes, no, seriously, I want to be part of this. Come and take some pictures. So he gave me his best photographer. I went to his studio, and they took the most incredible pictures of me that I still use to this day. And she turned to me, Janelle was her name, the photographer. She was so amazing. And we were in this huge white box. And my sister came, for moral support and just for fun, And she said, let's get messy. And I go, yeah, let's get messy. And she goes, no, I mean really messy. Are you ready for that? And I went, what do you mean? And she goes, I mean, let's get it all over you, messy. And I just went, okay. And so I just ran with it, right? So she said, let's just make a smoothie. And I was already making food for the shoot and stuff. Let's make a smoothie, and let's literally pour it all over you. Because the way that you describe blending is that you can't mess it up. Like you talked about how, because I was telling her how what I love about the blender is that it levels the playing field in the kitchen. and it enables anybody to make healthy fast food with very little skills and even less time. It's literally child's play, right? And so she said, so let's show that the cool, you talked about how you can't mess it up. Because, the thing I love about smoothies is that there is no smoothie that I cannot rescue from the depths of despair. Like some smoothies taste like the swamp water where the plants came to die, but with a little bit of lemon zest, lemon juice, a little bit of banana or some fruit or some nuts and seeds or whatever, I can make it into something incredible. Some spices, ginger, cinnamon, whatever. She goes, let's show that we're not afraid of the mess. And that was an it has to be me moment, right? And I'll give it to you within the context of this conversation. That unless you're going to choose to kill somebody, which let's agree that we're not doing that, there are very few messes in life that can't be cleaned up. And I'd rather regret what I did do as opposed to what I didn't do, right? And so my sister, she thought it was the greatest day where she poured that smoothie all over me. And Janelle it was so much fun. It was so much fun getting messy, right? And it got all over me. Let me tell you, that smoothie got in places I didn't know smoothies could get to, if you know what I mean. Like, it was disgusting. Like, I think I was under the shower for like an hour and a half trying to wash that smoothie off of me. But it was such a teachable moment for me, where, you just jump in the shower, right? And I know that there are other messes in life that cannot be solved quite simply like that. But it's still been a really powerful metaphor for me, right? And when it came time to launch the Blend Go, those photographs, and I thank you, Kane, because I love you, and Janelle, they launched my brand into the stratosphere because it captured people's attention, right? It was like, that woman is covered in sludge and she is laughing. She's laughing because so what, right? And it really became a visual for me. And I keep that picture close to me because it just reminds me that the mess is where the magic happens. The mess is where we find our way to the joy. The mess is how we learn and grow. So, that's one of the things that we are going to constantly be celebrating on this podcast is celebrating the mess. I'm going to be celebrating the mess with each and every one of our guests. And, I invite you to celebrate the mess as well. That is how you find the solutions. It's how you find the answers. It's how you figure out what the next it has to be me moment is. So celebrate it all. Celebrate the wins. Celebrate the losses. Celebrate the uncomfortable moments. Celebrate the triumphs and the elation of getting it right, in inverted commas, or having the adulation or the success or whatever, right? That's the other piece of it has to be me. We all define success differently. And you have the right to define it your way, just as I do, right? So for some people, it's money, power, and prestige. And they want a high-powering job and they want the Ferrari and the whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. For other people, it's, I want to find a great love. I want to have a family. I don't really care how much money. I just want to be comfortable. I want to feel happy in my life. I want to contribute. They're both beautiful dreams, right? It just depends on your perspective, right? So I think the other part of it has to be me is how we define failure. So I've talked about this in episode 1. I talked about it a little bit in this episode about it has to be your yes and it has to be your no, right? And your definition of success and your definition of failure. Well, I'll give you the definition of failure that I embrace, which is just not trying. Failing to try. That's my definition. And it's the only definition that I embrace, because if we go to Nelson Mandela again, I maybe could call this podcast I Love Nelson Mandela, right? But if we accept the idea that there is no losing, there's only winning and learning, where is failure? It kind of has to be co-checked at the door, right? Because there is no failure. You cannot fail. You cannot fail. You can only win or learn. So get messy, right? Show up for yourself. Give it a go. Dive in and clean up the mess later, right? If you're not hurting anybody, how messy can it really get? You know what I mean? So I probably will use that photo, actually. Those of you that have been in the Blender Girl community for a long time will have seen that photo. It's everywhere on the internet, right? I used to use it as my business card because it got attention, I'll tell you that, right? But it's just fun, right? So I've been talking a lot about health and nutrition this episode and the power of food to help you have a better life and make room for your It Has to Be Me. But one of the things that I would say about it is finding that balance of self-care and fun, right? That paying attention and being mindful is about that balance, right? It's about giving yourself permission to find that balance every day. And that balance is different depending on the other players and what's going on that day, right? So giving yourself permission to find a balance of self-care and care for others and a balance of self-care and fun. Because what do we want to do more of? The things that we find fun. The things that give us pleasure, the things that give us joy, the things that light us up, the things that make us feel what it is to be alive, right? So decide that that's where you're going to make your decisions from with regards to It Has to Be Me. All right. So next week, I want to talk about what holds us back. What holds us back from claiming our It Has to Be Me. So join me next week. Let's dive into the messiness of that.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.